Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English. Now, before we start, can you please let me know if I'm clearly audible and visible? Please let me know in the comments. Again, I would like to apologize for the delayed start. The team has been facing a lot of technical issues today, and as a result, the session had to be postponed. So, before I start, I just want to check and confirm if the audio video is clear. Please let me know in the comments. Great. Everything looks good. So let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. Let's start by looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of The Hindu, I have chosen 6 important articles for a detailed analysis. This comprehensive discussion will ensure that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. So let's begin, but before that, I have a couple of important announcements. One, if you want the PDF of the session, please scan the QR code on your screen and join my Telegram channel. After the session ends, I'll share the PDF over here. And even yesterday's PDF, I'm given to understand that it has not been accessible to everyone. So I will reshare yesterday's PDF as well, along with the PDF of today's class. Then tonight at 7 p.m., I would be conducting the last free session of Unacademy Platinum. Unacademy Platinum is a two-way experience session where the teacher not only teaches the students live on camera, but the students get to keep their cameras on and interact with the teachers. So if you want to experience this unique mode of learning, a effective mode of learning with personal mentorship and guidance from the educators, then please attend this free session which I'll be taking up today. So the link for this session is provided in the video description. You can click on it, register, and at 7 p.m. we'll be discussing a very important topic, especially for 2026 aspirants, because a lot of students have been asking me, sir, how do I make a timetable? How do I ensure my preparation is disciplined? How do I ensure I cover my syllabus? So this made me realize that many students find it difficult to make a timetable of their own, especially working professionals, those who are still in college. So I thought we would take up a session today as part of the Platinum experience and discuss how to make the best timetable possible given your circumstances. So if you would like to join the session, please click on the link provided in the video description box below. With this, let's get started. We have some very important developments to discuss with regard to India Pakistan. I'm sure by now all of you are updated as to what has happened yesterday. So I would just give a quick recap of what has happened and then we will analyze these developments. So yesterday evening, the government of India held a press conference. Foreign Secretary informed the nation and the world that India Pakistan have arrived at a ceasefire with regard to the ongoing conflict between India and Pakistan. So this took everyone by surprise. But minutes before that, US President Donald Trump went public with this announcement and even appeared to claim that the US had mediated between India and Pakistan. So this announcement of a ceasefire has generated a lot of mixed response in the country. As I said, it has shocked a number of people, especially regarding the manner in which it was announced, the manner in which it was brought out. But however, Pakistan being Pakistan, within 3 hours after the announcement of the ceasefire, there were repeated violations that was being reported in Jammu and Srinagar. The Chief Minister of J&K, Omar Abdullah, started tweeting by around 8 p.m. that heavy shelling along with air defense units being activated was being reported in the Jammu and Kashmir sector. So late night, the Foreign Secretary held one more press conference confirming that Pakistani side has breached the ceasefire within hours and India urged Pakistan to ensure that it lives up to the commitment. So according to the version given by the government of India, yesterday around 3:35 p.m., the late afternoon, apparently the Pakistani DGMO, the Director General of Military Operations, reached out to the DGMO on the Indian side. Because between the DGMOs of India and Pakistan, there exists a hotline. What is a hotline? A hotline is a readily available channel of communication set up between nodal authorities so that they can immediately talk to each other, communicate with each other. So between India and Pakistan, given the risk of escalation of a conflict, A channel of hotline was maintained at the DGMO level, and using this hotline, the Pakistani DGMO called up the Indian DGMO asking for a ceasefire. And India agreed to the ceasefire and announced it by around 5 p.m. But before this became public knowledge, before India officially announced the ceasefire, US President Donald Trump posted this on social media, on platforms like Truth Social and Instagram and X, and including from the official accounts of White House. This controversial message was posted. Now, why am I saying it is controversial? That is because India has firmly denied any involvement of mediation efforts. So, this conflict, which Pakistan initiated through the Pahalgam terror attack, India responded to it with Operation Sindoor, with targeted strikes at terror camps. India said it's a non escalatory response from India because we did not attack military targets, we didn't attack civilian targets. We only chose terrorist targets. And yet, as expected, Pakistan chose to respond, and Pakistan retaliated over the last 3 days against our civilian and military targets. But according to reports, India also has carried out counterattacks and retaliation on Pakistan military targets. But however, the information flow from the government has been very limited. Government of India has acknowledged very few counterattacks from India. For example, on 8th of May, the government did acknowledge that India launched drone attacks and missile strikes at major Pakistani cities like Karachi, Lahore, Rawalpindi, Islamabad, etc. But there have been media reports that India has launched major strikes on Pakistani air bases and Pakistani military facilities, including command and control structures and ammunition depots. But however, on this, there has been no official word, no confirmation from the government. So, of course, as far as the discussion is concerned, we'll largely stick to what the government is telling us. As I said, the government has informed that the ceasefire was requested by Pakistan and India agreed to it, which makes it a bilateral ceasefire arrangement between India and Pakistan. That is the official version of the government of India. But what explains this tweet and social media post by Donald Trump, which was done before the ceasefire announcement? In fact, India held a press conference after Donald Trump had posted this. And the post says, as you can see here on the screen, I'm sure many of you would have already seen this. It says that the US mediated between the two sides, held long nights of conversations between top leaders. So Trump is referring to the conversations that Marco Rubio held with the top officials on the side of India and Pakistan. Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. So it has been reported in Western press, in Western media, and also in some sections of Indian media that the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio was in touch constantly with India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, with India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, and as well as with Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir, and as well as Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. So over the last 3 days, Marco Rubio was constantly speaking to the leaders in Pakistan, leaders in India, and this is apparently what Donald Trump is referring to, the long nights of talks and conversations. And Trump's post indicates as if the US has pushed India Pakistan to agree to a ceasefire. So this is where the controversy comes up. Now let's look at both sides of the argument here. See, on one hand, the whole nation has stood united behind our government, behind our brave armed forces, who went to this conflict with Pakistan to avenge the Pahalgam attack and to set up a credible deterrent against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. On this platform as well, we have repeated again and again that India's decision to launch Operation Sindoor was something which was very much needed. A strong response was necessary, not just to avenge the Pahalgam attack and to serve justice to the victims, but to create a strong deterrent for Pakistan to prevent future attacks from being sponsored against India. But over the last few days, as I said, there have been few developments, controversial developments. During the course of the conflict, be it the citizens, the media, or the opposition, none of them questioned the government because the government needed our backing. The whole country stood with the government and the armed forces. And of course, there would be a gap in information. The government would try to hold on to some information for security reasons, for operational secrecy. But however, after the events have passed, not informing the nation as to what exactly has happened, or essentially not maintaining transparency in the information management, is something that has concerned a lot of people in the country, because the nation doesn't know as to what exactly happened between 8th of May and 10th of May. While Operation Sindoor was clearly informed, and the first strikes from India was something that all of us are aware of. The exact details are also, they were brought out in the public domain. But after that, post Pakistani retaliation and India's uh, counterattacks, there has absolutely been an information blackout. And this has raised more questions. It has raised questions regarding what was India's strategy? What was our end goal? If India launched Operation Sindoor, our, of course, initial goal was to hit the terror factories, the terror launch pads, the terror camps, which we did. Credit goes to the armed forces and the government of India for the courageous decision. But what after that? Pakistani retaliation was anticipated. India was well prepared to counter the retaliation. But what happened when Pakistan retaliated? Something which is not very clear. The fog of war has engulfed the facts on the ground. A lot of disinformation, fake news pushed on social media, especially by Pakistan, has also changed the narrative. See, Pakistan is very adept at information warfare. Pakistan has managed to shift the narrative, try to shift the blame on India, to project India as the aggressor. And that is exactly what Western media has largely picked up. The Western media, which has largely been sympathetic to the Pakistani cause historically, they have largely pushed the Pakistani propaganda, the Pakistani narrative, with hardly giving any space for the Indian narrative. The question which comes up right now is, what did we achieve at the end of it? Will this really deter terrorism in the future? Because, as you can see, within hours, Pakistan has broken the ceasefire. Now, this comes as an embarrassment to India because India went public, announced the ceasefire, stating this was bilateral, there was no mediation involved. But US is saying otherwise. The US president himself is saying that we mediated, we pressurized both sides to agree to the ceasefire. Now, why is this so important? What will happen if US mediates between the two sides? See, please understand, India has put a lot of effort over the last 5 decades to ensure that there is no third party involvement, no third party mediation between India and Pakistan. Why? Because we learned a harsh lesson in 1948 when India took the Kashmir issue to the United Nations to bring the first war to an end and to ensure that the Kashmir issue is worked out as per the UN Charter. India was very hopeful that the UN would be an unbiased platform because it was a newly created institution. And Prime Minister Nehru put a lot of faith in the UN system. And also, please understand at that point, India's ability also was limited to drag the war or to sustain more casualties because India at that point, which was newly independent, was dealing with many pressing challenges as well, from several internal security problems to communal unrest to severe economic challenges. So, hoping that we can bring the war to a quick end and hope for a fair resolution from the UN, we took the matter to the UN. And as it turned out, it would end up becoming one of India's biggest diplomatic blunders. Why? Because at the UN, a clear bias was shown towards Pakistan, especially by the Western powers, by United Kingdom, United States, etc. This would continue throughout 1950s and 1960s, where Western powers would more show inclination towards Pakistan, especially given that Pakistan aligned with them during the Cold War. Pakistan would join Western military alliances like CENTO. It would clearly take a stand with Western democracies, and Pakistan became dear to them. Whereas India, which championed non alignment, maintained a distance between the two superpowers, would be sidelined by the Western powers. So, this led to unnecessary Western interference between India and Pakistan on our bilateral issues, including the Kashmir issue, which was never appreciated by India. We were waiting for an opportunity to eliminate the UN and to limit foreign involvement in our bilateral matters with Pakistan. And that opportunity opened up in 1971 when the Indira Gandhi government delivered a crushing defeat to Pakistan and broke the country into two parts. So, following the 1971 war, in 1972, the Shimla Agreement was worked out, which Pakistan has recently kept in suspension. Recently, after India kept Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, Pakistan retaliated by keeping the Shimla Agreement in suspension. The Shimla Agreement was critical because through the Shimla Agreement, India forced Pakistan to agree because we had all the leverage after the 71 conflict. We forced Pakistan to agree that any issue between the two countries would be settled only through bilateral talks, which means there would be no third party involvement. We renamed the ceasefire line as line of control to eliminate the role of the UN in monitoring the ceasefire. So the UN's role was eliminated and involvement of any third country, be it US or Russia or China or UK, involvement of any third power was restricted by India, and we forced Pakistan to accept this. And over the last 50 years, India has remained committed to this cause, and we have put in a lot of diplomatic effort to ensure that no third country gets involved in the India Pakistan issue. In fact, this is not new from Trump. Trump has done this many times. During his first presidency, I don't know if you guys know this, he had made a controversial suggestion that he will mediate between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. Back then, India had rejected the statement. And if you remember the Balkot airstrikes that India carried out after the Pulwama terror attacks, Pakistan retaliated, just like we saw this time as well. It led to an aerial dogfight between Indian Air Force and Pakistani Air Force. India shot down a Pakistani F-16 as well. But unfortunately, India lost a MiG-21 and an Indian pilot, Wing Commander Abhinandan, ended up landing in POK and was captured by Pakistan as a POW. So during this crisis, when India was trying to secure the release of Abhinandan, it was US which played a role. India acknowledged that as well. US did play a role, but Trump went public with it. Even then, Trump had posted on social media that it was he who negotiated the release of Abhinandan, and he took credit for that. Now, this looks very bad in front of the international community. This was a conflict to be settled on our terms. India was very clear that our response would be strong. India has made it clear that any act of terror would be treated as an act of war going forward. India has raised the deterrent. India has shown the appetite to take it to the next level if necessary and escalate the tensions if required to punish Pakistan for its sponsorship of terrorism. So eventually, there has to be an end goal if India had to exit from this escalation. There had to be a credible, provable achievement at the end of it. Yes, hitting the terror camps was a big achievement, but is this a deterrent enough? Did we push Pakistan back? If you look at it from a, let's say, an unbiased viewpoint, Pakistan managed to shift the narrative, and now you never know, Pakistan might run away with the narrative. The Pakistani deep state will advocate to its population that, look, India is the aggressor, we defeated and we won the war. They will even claim victory over this. Is that clear? And United States, by claiming credit, has essentially undermined India's leverage over Pakistan. And Pakistan has not even followed the ceasefire, with repeated ceasefire violations being reported last night. So what will happen next is a question on the minds of Indians today. Did India lose the plot in between? Our response was great. The government, the armed forces, delivered a right response to Pakistan on the 7th of May. But after the 8th of May, did we lose the plot? Shouldn't India keep US out of it? Shouldn't the exit have been worked out on our terms? Because when you work out a ceasefire, it has to be on our terms. You need to extract commitments. There should have been enforceable commitments from Pakistan. For example, force Pakistan to investigate the Pahalgam attack with us. Force Pakistan to hand over some of the wanted terrorists. Or make Pakistan commit before a ceasefire that they will not sponsor terrorism against India. None of this has been done. No talks have taken place, no commitments have been extracted, and a ceasefire was announced. And what happened? Within 3 hours, Pakistan showed its true colors, violated the ceasefire again, and now the Indian forces are dealing with the consequences again. So this is where accountability comes into picture. See, it's not about criticizing the government during a sensitive time. We all understand it's a very delicate, sensitive time. That is why the whole nation stood united. Irrespective of political ideology, irrespective of religion, the whole nation stood united behind our government and the armed forces. But now the time will come to ask questions. Since there was a lack of information flow, there is no clarity as to what happened. Right? From a global perspective, it appears that Pakistan has won the narrative war and India was missing in the narrative war or the information warfare that happened. That is something you can't afford in today's geopolitics. So there are some shortcomings, some questions, tough questions to be answered by the government. Now let me know what you think about this. We are not being unnecessarily critical of the government. No, that's not the point. It's about the people of the country getting to know as to what happened. What was the end goal? Did we achieve our objective? Will this be a deterrent against Pakistan? Of course, we know that one off strikes are not enough. We have seen that after the surgical strikes in 2016, after Balkot airstrikes in 2019, Pakistan never learned the lesson because one off strikes were not enough. Now, the question is, was Operation Sindoor sufficient to deter Pakistan in the future? So, that is the question that needs to be answered. So, let me know what you think about this in the comments. The US mediation, the US involvement, and Trump claiming credit for it before India could announce it, it essentially undermines our diplomatic standpoint. It undermines the leverage we had on Pakistan. It allows Pakistan to run away with the narrative and even claim victory and reshape the narrative, which could become a big setback for India. In fact, many former diplomats, right, many experts who have expressed their opinion about this, even they have been shocked about India's sudden exit from this conflict and they're worried about the possible long term implications. Now, what if from today or from tomorrow, Pakistan escalates again? There have been reports that India has delivered a fitting response in the last 3 days, but we haven't heard about it. Of course, during live operations, it can't be reported. As I said, on the grounds of national security, on the grounds of operational secrecy, there is a need to curb certain information, live reporting especially. That is a necessity. The government is right in that regard. But after the operations are done, maybe the next day, maybe tonight, there has to be some updates. There has to be some information which has to be shared because you need to play the information war as well. You need to shape the narrative as well. If you don't counter Pakistan's propaganda, Pakistan's narrative, everything that has been done, the entire sacrifice of our armed forces might end up going waste. Look at how the people of Poonch have suffered due to heavy shelling, heavy artillery fire from Pakistan. Look at how people in the border areas have panicked because of the blackouts and constant projectiles being fired and intercepted. It is something which is unimaginable. So people who have braved through this, the victims of Pahalgam attack, the armed forces who bravely fought against Pakistan, they would need those answers. What was our end goal? What was the strategy? Yes, tactically, India has done phenomenally well. This escalation that India did was something that nobody expected, that even Pakistan didn't anticipate. India climbed up the escalation ladder, showing an appetite for an escalated conflict if required to punish Pakistan and to deter Pakistan. But the point is, have we achieved what we wanted? So, this is the answer that the country is looking for. So, let me know what you think about this. Now, please take up this practice question based on what we have discussed. And let's look at a related article, a very interesting article, which explores the legality of India's right to self defense. Operation Sindoor was all about self defense. It was a justified retaliation from India, self defense against terrorism, just state sponsored. Now, the question is, from a legal perspective, in the context of international legal framework, what does international law say about targeting another country, attacking another country with military options? Do you have a right to defend yourself when you're being attacked from another country? If there are terror attacks coming from the soil of another country, can you invoke any international legal principles and contextualize your right to retaliate and right to self defend? That is what this article explores. And I think it's a very interesting article. So let's explore this in slight detail. There could be a mains question based on this. See, under the UN Charter, the UN Charter is the constitution of the UN, defines the principles of the UN, the objectives of the UN, and it also places certain obligations on the UN member states. The primary goal of UN was to maintain peace and stability when it was set up in 1945 after the Second World War, to prevent conflicts, to prevent global conflicts again. So under Article 2, the UN Charter states that countries cannot violate the sovereignty of another nation. UN member states cannot use military force to violate the territory, the integrity, the political stability of another nation. This sort of military aggression is prohibited under Article 2. Is this clear to everyone? Article 2 prohibits a country from attacking another country using its military force. It prohibits the violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another nation. But there is one exception. There is an exception. Article 51 provides for that exception. What does Article 51 state? If a country is attacked with armed force from the other state, then obviously you have a right to defend yourself. Article 51 provides the right to self defense. Let's say a country A has been attacked by country B. Then country A can invoke Article 51, which is an exception to Article 2. As per Article 2, no UN member state can attack another UN member state. It is prohibited. Military aggression is prohibited under the UN Charter. But if you are attacked by another country, obviously no country will sit and wait or sit and watch. There is an exception here under Article 51, which you can invoke under international law, the right to self defense. If you're attacked through the armed forces of another country by a state, you can retaliate, you can defend yourself, and this is an exception which has been provided. Now, Article 51 clearly states that right to self defense can be invoked only in response to an armed attack by a state. Now, the International Court of Justice, which has interpreted this provision, has provided more clarity on this. There was a case between Nicaragua and United States in 1986 when the US was meddling and interfering in Nicaragua during the Cold War period. In this legal battle at the International Court of Justice, the ICJ basically pointed out that only if there is a grave use of force, only if there is a grave use of force by the enemy, then a country can invoke Article 51. That is the threshold which was set up by ICJ. Which means if a country has declared an all-out war, if a country has committed an act of war against you, then you have a right to invoke Article 51 and retaliate against it and state that this is our right to self-defense. Now the question is, did India invoke Article 51 when we launched Operation Sindoor? The answer is no. Why? There is a reason behind it. When the Foreign Secretary briefed the nation about India's response, when India struck the 9 terror camps on Pakistani soil, when we launched 24 missiles at Pakistan and POK, India pointed out that this is a response of India to the Pahalgam attack. India's official diplomatic response has been very clear that the first instigation was the Pahalgam attack, which was carried out by terrorists sponsored by Pakistan. So India brought in the terror angle that Pakistani state is involved in sponsoring non-state actors, terrorists against India. These terrorists have attacked India. So now we will retaliate against Pakistan. But we were careful not to mention Article 51. Why? Because terrorists and non-state actors are not defined and covered under Article 51. Article 51 applies only for state actors, or it applies only for UN member states. Of course, there is an exception to this as well. I'll come to that point. If a state is sponsoring terrorism, there is a provision available. But India was careful to avoid mentioning Article 51, because if you do that, if you invoke Article 51, then you have a duty to report this to the UN. You will have to report to the UN Security Council immediately after you have carried out the attack in self-defense. India did that as well. When India briefed the permanent and non-permanent members of UNSC. The UNSC has 15 members in total, 5 permanent and 10 non-permanent. We briefed 13 of these members. Why 13? Because one of them is Pakistan. How can you brief Pakistan? Obviously, Pakistan is the enemy at that point. So we did not brief Pakistan because Pakistan is a non-permanent member right now. We also did not brief another country, which is Sierra Leone, an African nation, which is a non-permanent member right now, because it doesn't have an envoy in India. It doesn't have a diplomatic presence in India. So excluding Pakistan and Sierra Leone, the other 13 members of UNSC were briefed by India. We even gave evidence to link the terrorists involved in Pahalgam attack, to connect them with Pakistan and Pakistan-based terror groups. So this way, India has informed the UNSC just in case, but we have not explicitly invoked Article 51. Now the question is, can we use the right to self-defense against non-state actors? Now let's discuss this. It's a very important doctrine that you need to understand. So as I told you, Article 51 explicitly does not apply for non-state actors. It is specific to state actors. It is specific to UN member states. But what if there is a state sponsoring the non-state actors? What if there is a country sponsoring terrorists? Now this is a doctrine, a new doctrine which has been evolved and pushed by none other than United States after the 9/11 attacks. The US has been a big proponent of invoking Article 51, using the right to self-defense in case terrorists are sponsored by state entities. US has used this repeatedly, especially to defend its actions in Abbottabad in 2011 when American special forces breached Pakistan's sovereignty and assassinated Osama bin Laden. US has used this argument in Syria when American forces, special forces targeted Islamic State in Syria. So US has been supporting military action against non-state actors in other countries, even if it breaches their territory and sovereignty. And it has been claiming this should be seen as right to self-defense. If non-state actors are being directly funded, supported, sheltered by state actors, then a country should have a right to retaliate, even in case of violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty. But however, the legal clarity is not available here. This is US perspective. US has been pushing for it. The ICJ says that there are restrictions in this regard. Yes, a country can retaliate against another country if non-state actors have carried out an attack and if you can attribute the attack to state actors, but there are restrictions. In the Nicaragua case and also in the recent DRC versus Uganda case, where DRC accused Uganda of sponsoring non-state actors, the ICJ has said it is important to attribute the attack to a state actor. It means you have to bring evidence. If you're accusing a state for sponsoring non-state actors, if you're accusing a country for supporting, sponsoring terrorists against your country, you have to provide the evidence to the global community. You have to provide the clear attribution linking the state and non-state actors. If you can do this, then Article 51 can still be invoked to exercise your right to self-defense. Now, if you look at India's response, India has carefully avoided contextualizing Operation Sindoor under Article 51. Though we have briefed the UNSC members, we have shared evidence as well. By the way, India did have some technical evidence to link some of the terrorists, the Pakistani terrorists, with Pakistan. We have shared this with foreign capitals, with envoys of other countries, but we have decided not to invoke Article 51. You know why? Because this will give a greater role for the UN. If you invoke Article 51, then UNSC will take it to the next step. Once the ceasefire is called, right now that ceasefire is likely to be implemented from today onwards at least, what will happen is that UNSC might try to push a resolution. And if the resolution gets the support, then UN will monitor the ceasefire if required. It could even possibly deploy peacekeeping troops. But of course, it is dependent on whether all the permanent 5 members will support it or not. Right? Because all the P5 countries have to support that resolution. But there is a possibility where you will unnecessarily drag UN into it. So India wanted to avoid that. So we did not invoke Article 51, but we have followed the conditions of Article 50. Right? Because we have seen the act of terror as an act of war. We have attributed the attack to Pakistan. India's foreign secretary in each and every press conference has been very clear that Pakistan has sponsored these terrorists. Pakistan has been hosting these terrorists. We have given examples of previous attacks as well. And we have shared the evidence with not just the current members of UNSC, but with many other countries to keep them updated so that India can have a justifiable legal response in the context of international law. Now, there is another new doctrine which has come up. Unwilling or unable doctrine. What is this unwilling, unable doctrine? Now, let's say in a country, there are terrorists who are operating. Let's take Pakistan itself, for example. Right? We know very well there are terror groups operating from Pakistan. Now, let's say Pakistan says we are unable to tackle these terrorists. We are not able to prevent terrorism. Or let's say Pakistan, which is unwilling, which we all know that it's unwilling to tackle terrorism. So if there is an unwillingness on the part of the state, or let's say it has an inability to prevent terrorism, this could also be invoked as a viable legal reason to invoke Article 51 and right to self-defense. Let's say a country is not able to tackle terrorism or it doesn't want to tackle terrorism. In either of the cases, if it is unwilling or unable, then you can still invoke right to self-defense. That is what the US has been pushing for. As I told you, it has justified the killing of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan using this very same doctrine. It has said that Pakistan was unwilling to tackle terrorism. It was unable to get hold of Osama bin Laden. So we decided to breach Pakistan's sovereignty and kill Osama bin Laden. US used the same argument with regard to the strikes it carried out in Syria to target Islamic State. The US position was the Syrian regime under Bashar al-Assad is unwilling to tackle the terrorists, unable to tackle them. So we will exercise the right to self-defense and target the terrorists. But however, this position, this whole doctrine of unwilling, unable doctrine, it is opposed by the rivals of US, China and Russia, along with Mexico as well. So India's position is a little ambiguous on this doctrine. When UNSC adopted the ARIA formula in 2021, the ARIA formula deals with the right of a country to retaliate against non-state actors and terrorists. So India stated that self-defense should be available to tackle terrorism, but there are three conditions to be met, according to India. India laid down three conditions under the ARIA formula. What are the three conditions? The non-state actor should have repeatedly carried out attacks against the state. Let's say a terror group like Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed. If it has carried out repeated attacks against India, that's condition number one. Then you can invoke the unwilling, unable doctrine, the right to self-defense, and attack the country as well in order to target the terrorists. Second condition is that host state is unwilling to address the threat posed by the non-state actor, which is the case with Pakistan. Pakistan is not willing to tackle terrorism because it is sponsoring terrorism. And the third condition, if the host state is actively supporting, sponsoring these non-state actors, which is what Pakistan does. So India laid down these conditions under which the unwilling, unable doctrine can be invoked to exercise right to self-defense. That is what India has done under Operation Sindoor. But again, if you look at this from an international legal perspective, unwilling, unable doctrine is still not accepted in international customary law. Because there is no clarity whether these three conditions will apply one by one or together. Should all the three conditions be met, or should it just be one criteria which is met? There's no clarity on this. So, despite that, as I said, India has exercised its right to self-defense, but without invoking Article 51 explicitly. Because, see, as I said, it's a very dicey situation. Now, if you look at whether India's response was essential, was it proportionate? Obviously, India has followed these basic norms of international law. International law dictates, UN principles dictate that your response should be essential. It should be absolutely necessary to protect your country from an attack. And it should be proportionate, right? You can't use disproportionate force. So if you look at India's response in Operation Sindoor, our response has not only been essential, it has been proportionate as well. That's why the first strikes we carried out was only on terror targets. We did not hit Pakistan's military targets. We didn't hit Pakistan's economic or energy infrastructure or social infrastructure. We didn't hit Pakistani civilians. Specifically, the terror targets were chosen out by India, which makes it proportional. But here as well, with regard to necessity and proportionality doctrine, there is a dual argument here. There are few countries which have a narrow interpretation of this. They say that you can exercise your right to self-defend yourself against terror attacks only after attacks have happened or when the attack is happening. But others take a broader view. Like countries like US, they have a broader view of this. They say that we can even carry out attacks to prevent an attack from happening. You can basically preempt an attack. If you know that an attack is being planned, or if you know terrorists are hiding in a country, terror camps are present, the US argument is that we will hit them before they hit us. So this is a broader interpretation, and proportionality, right? It is again based on interpretation of each country. It's not that there is one global standard which is accepted. So there's no clarity when it comes to these aspects in international law. Article 51 is clearly established. It is seen as part of customary international law. But the unwilling, unable doctrine and with regard to proportionality, with regard to essentiality of an attack, this doctrine is not very clear. Countries try to push their own interpretation based on their interests. That is the reason why we have not invoked Article 51 explicitly, though we have largely followed the requirements. We have briefed the other countries, we have briefed the UN members, shared evidence with them. Our response was proportional, it was essential, right? We have again tried attributing the attack to Pakistan, clearly told the world Pakistan is sponsoring these terrorists, not for the first time, it has done it again and again. That position of India makes us legally sound. It will secure India's interests within the international legal framework. If someone were to question our actions, India can defend itself, stating that this was a necessary, proportionate response by exercising the right to self-defense. Clear? So please make a note of this. So what could happen next? As I told you, following the ceasefire, the UN might try to give a role for itself. It can try to do that. Possibly it can try to adopt a resolution calling for the end of hostilities, and it can try to impose the end of hostilities as well. Right? Potentially, it can try to deploy a peacekeeping force. It can even consider penal action for those who violate the ceasefire. Like, for example, let's say including economic sanctions on those who break the ceasefire. Right? So such actions can be considered by the UNSC. But however, it's not going to happen. Why? Because P5 countries have to support such a resolution. And the P5 itself is a divided group. The P5 countries, they have their own geopolitical interests. Right? China has its own interests to back and support Pakistan. Russia obviously will stand with India. France will definitely stand with India. US and UK, they might stand with India, but again, you can't trust them entirely because they have their own self interests. So, such resolution, if it is pushed, because Pakistan can try to do that. Since Pakistan is a non permanent member as well, right, it can try to garner some support and try to push a resolution on this after the ceasefire comes into complete effect. So, there are possibilities that where UNSC will call for end of hostilities or place sanctions for violation of ceasefire or even consider possible peacekeeping force. But none of it will actually take effect because the resolution may not pass because one of the P5 countries will use their veto. If the resolution is against Pakistan, China will veto it. If resolution is against India, Russia, France will veto it. So resolution will have no impact. It is this reason exactly why UN becomes ineffective, pretty much useless in such conflicts. But still, it is important for India as a responsible country to contextualize Operation Sindoor under the framework of international law. And we have largely met these standards and conditions. Our response was essential, proportionate. We have informed the world, we have informed the United Nations as well. Right? We have attributed the attack to Pakistan. And India has ensured that we meet all the criteria required to be safe under international legal framework. Please take up this question based on this. Now let's look at another important article, a very, very important development which happened, which has largely been ignored and sidelined because of the India-Pakistan tensions that took place. So India-UK achieved a big milestone in their relationship. As I said, it has largely been sidelined and ignored because India-Pakistan headlines dominated the newspapers. India-UK have agreed on a free trade agreement. A historic FTA has been finalized. It will be signed very soon. It has not been signed formally yet. In another few weeks or 3 months, they will be expected to sign it, and it will take maybe 1 year to enforce and implement it. All right, so it has not been signed, it has just been finalized. India UK FTA has been finalized. It will be signed soon in few weeks, maybe in a couple of months, and it will come into force maybe by the end of the year. Now, what does this FTA mean to India, to UK? Why is it important? Why is it so significant? This is a huge breakthrough for India. Why? What are the benefits for India? Are there any concerns? So that is what we will examine quickly. Now, did you know that India and UK are the fifth and sixth largest economies in the world? Obviously, when two such big economies come together to sign a free trade agreement, it will have tremendous potential to benefit both the sides. If there are beginners who don't know what is an FTA, who don't know what is a free trade agreement, let me explain quickly. With regard to trade between two countries, there are always barriers to trade. There can be different types of barriers to trade. Usually, there are two types of barriers: tariff based barriers and non tariff barriers. So, tariff based barriers are nothing but your taxes, the import duties, custom duties, anti dumping duties, countervailing duties, etc. All the taxes that you levy on imports becomes the tariffs. If the tariffs are very high, like how Trump has waged a tariff war by raising the tariffs, it will discourage imports. It will become a obstruction to trade. So it's a barrier to trade. It's a tariff-based barrier to trade. Anything which is not related to tariff becomes a non-tariff barrier. So this could be the lack of synchronization in your policies, your trade policy, your environmental policies, your competition laws. Then it could be labor standards in the two countries, right? Or let's say connectivity and infrastructure for trade. If it is absent, so that becomes a non-tariff barrier to trade, right? If you don't have good connectivity, if you don't have the right port facilities and infrastructure and logistics to carry out trade, obviously it's a barrier to trade. It will reduce the volume of trade which can take place. Even the visa immigration policies of the two countries matters because very strict visa immigration policies will restrict the movement of people and that will limit the economic opportunities available, right? So all these are non-tariff barriers. The purpose of FTA is to address all these barriers. Depending on how it is negotiated, the idea is to create a free movement regime for goods, services, investments, and people as well. But some FTAs will be restricted only to goods, but some FTAs can be broad based. It can cover not just goods, it will cover services, it will cover investments as well. It could cover even the movement of people as well. Now, the India UK FTA is actually a broad based FTA. This has the potential to transform the trade relationship because please understand the United Kingdom is a key market for Indian exports. If you look at the total trade volume between India and UK, currently it is around 60 billion US dollars, which is quite massive. So for India, UK is the 16th largest trading partner and India is UK's 11th largest trading partner. So it is indeed a significant trade relationship. And the best part is that India has a trade surplus over UK. Out of the $60 billion, which is the total bilateral volume of the trade, India has a trade surplus in this relationship. What does that mean? It means we export more to UK than what we import. So UK is a key market for Indian exports, for Indian agriculture, Indian pharmaceuticals, India's MSME sector, right? India's service-based industry. We have a lot of exports headed towards the UK. And also don't forget, India is one of the top investors in UK. India is the second largest investor that brings FDI into UK. A lot of Indian companies have big investments in the United Kingdom. And UK also is a top investor in India. It's one amongst the top 10 investors of FDI into India. A lot of British companies are invested in our country. So investments can be driven forward. Services will benefit, especially from India's perspective. This would be very beneficial for, let's say, legal services, financial services. Because don't forget, UK is a hub of the services industry, especially financial services. London is a hub of financial activity. So Indian startups can benefit. The IT companies, software-based companies can benefit, right? Plus, there is focus on immigration policies as well to make it easier for Indian students, Indian workers, especially Indian professionals who are seeking job opportunities, who want their social security to be well protected. So with this purpose, this FTA has been worked out, and the goal is to not just double the trade volume. The trade volume at the current rate will double by 2030. It is expected to cross $100 billion in another few years and touch $120 billion. But going forward, the goal of India and Britain is to ensure that we increase the trade volume by $34 billion every single year. So this potential is massive between India and UK. Now, this was very, very essential for UK after Brexit. After it exited European Union in 2016, Britain voted for exiting from EU and completed the exit process in 2020. Since then, it has been looking for trade partners. It has been looking to diversify its trade relationship. So from UK's perspective, the deal with India is very significant as India is a very lucrative market for them. Not just to sell their goods, also to sell their services, bring investments. And same with India. Since Brexit, we are looking for a separate deal with UK because parallelly we are negotiating a free trade agreement with European Union known as the broad-based trade and investment agreement. With EU, we have hit a lot of hurdles because these talks are going on since 2007. Since 2007, we are negotiating the broad-based trade and investment agreement with the EU, but there are many challenges we are yet to overcome. So after UK exited the European Union, we pursued a parallel FTA with UK and now it has been finalized. So it is very significant for both the sides. So let's see what are the expectations from this deal, what sectors will benefit, what will be the reduction in tariffs. Let's get a basic idea regarding this. See, I can't rush through this topic. We have to pay attention to this topic, look at the finer details as well, because there can be a specific detailed question on this, either in international relations or in Indian economy. So according to the deal, India would be slashing the tariffs on 90% of the products which Britain exports to India. Out of the total exports that Britain makes to India, 90% of those British goods coming to India will see a major tariff reduction. And 85% of them will become duty-free in the next decade. 85% of British goods coming to India will be given duty-free access. And in return, India will also get 99% of the export categories. They would be exempted from tariffs and they will have duty-free access. In fact, some of India's exports already have preferential tariff access into the UK market. But going forward, 99% of our exports into the UK market will see a tariff reduction with even complete duty free provision being provided in the coming decade. So this will significantly boost India's exports and boost British exports to India. It'll be mutually beneficial. So from India, which sectors will benefit? Sectors such as textiles. Textile is a critical industry for India. And India is a global leader. And we are in competition with other major textile exporters like Bangladesh, like Vietnam. Bangladesh and Vietnam already have preferential access in many markets. It has been tough for India's textile industry to compete with them. So now with Britain granting us almost tariff-free access for our textile industry, we can easily compete with Bangladesh and Vietnam, produce better quality textiles at a cheaper cost, and we can completely capture the UK market. Even other industries which are labor intensive, which require more physical labor, like leather industry, footwear industry, gems and jewelry, and small scale engineering components from the MSME sector, all these industries will stand to benefit. This is very important because when labor intensive industries benefit and increase their export potential, it will automatically translate into jobs. Because to produce these goods, you need more labor. So if the export potential increases, obviously the textile industry will hire more workers. The leather garment industry will hire more workers. Footwear industry will hire more workers, creating lakhs of jobs in India. Is that clear? That's why India always tries to ensure in any FTA that we focus on labor intensive industries. Labor intensive goods have to receive the benefit of the exports so that we can create jobs and boost our domestic economy. Britain's key industries will also benefit from this. For example, alcoholic beverages. UK is known for some of its fine alcoholic beverages, whiskey, gin, and scotch. Right now, India puts 150% tariff on it. Right? So this will be brought down to 75% immediately once the treaty goes into force, and eventually it will be reduced to 40%. So this will benefit the entry of British alcoholic beverages into the Indian market. Then British auto industry will also see a tariff reduction. Right now, British automobiles, they are taxed at 100%. So this will be brought down to just 10% to allow British auto manufacturers to bring their products into the Indian market. Now, let us see which industries will stand to benefit from this. As I told you, there will be a spike in exports, especially from the textiles and garments industry. So that's why the textile industry has welcomed the FTA. They are very positive and very ambitious about the deal because they are hoping exponential growth will happen and we will finally compete with Bangladesh and Vietnam because we previously couldn't, as they already had easy access into Western markets compared to Indian textiles and garments. Gems and jewelry will significantly benefit. India's auto industry will also benefit. Now, some of you might argue, sir, if British cars come to India, won't it hit Indian car manufacturers? It won't hit Indian car manufacturers. Why? Because please understand the market. British auto manufacturers primarily produce luxury cars. They hit a different segment. They target the ultra rich, the luxury segment. So British luxury cars entering the Indian market is good because it will not affect the common people. It will benefit Indian auto manufacturers. Why? Because Indian companies like, let's say, Maruti, they can mass produce the cheaper variants, the mass cars, as we call it, the mass segment, and flood Indian cars into the UK market. Because in UK, there is a demand for cheaper cars by the masses. So that is where Indian auto manufacturers will benefit. So it's quid pro quo. Our mid segment cannot be touched by UK auto manufacturers because they can't match our cost of production. If you look at the cars produced in India, even by foreign companies like Hyundai, Toyota, and Kia and others, the price point that comes out in India because of cheaper cost, cheaper raw material, right, and cheaper labor, that cannot be matched by UK companies in the mid segment. So mid segment in India, which is a critical segment for auto industry, will not be hit. Luxury segment is fine because that will not affect the common people. And we will actually get an opportunity to push the cheaper cars into the UK market, which is good for India's auto manufacturers. So it is a quid pro quo deal. But however, my last point here, there are few concerns. Some industries, some sectors have expressed concern, especially agriculture, MSME industry. Farmers are worried. Why? Because previously Indian farmers have had a bitter experience with some FTAs. I can give you some examples. For example, India-Sri Lanka FTA, it led to a flood of Sri Lankan tea and spices that hit the prices in the Indian market. So India's spice cultivators and tea plantation owners, they took a massive hit in, let's say, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Assam. They took a massive hit because of the FTA with Sri Lanka. Similarly, India-ASEAN FTA had a big impact on India's agriculture. From ASEAN countries, cheap rubber flooded the Indian market, hitting rubber cultivation in our country. So rubber cultivators in Kerala especially, they took a massive hit. Same with coffee and coconut industry. The better quality coconut coming from, let's say, Thailand, or better quality coffee coming from Vietnam, which was much cheaper. It hit the coconut industry in multiple states. It hit the coffee industry in Karnataka as well. So this is why farmers are worried that FTAs will bring better superior agri products at a cheaper price point, and Indian farmers will not be able to compete with that. Because don't forget, Indian agriculture has an inherent weakness, right? Because if you look at the average farmer in India, they don't hold on to large parcels of land, unlike what you see in other countries. India's farmers are very small farmers. They are fragmented. Small and marginal farmers are in majority. They barely own 2, 3 acres of land. Majority of farmers in India own less than 5 acres of land. So for them to compete with a farmer in another country who has access to farm machinery, better implements, better inputs, and who can mass produce at scale, it would be very difficult for Indian farmers to compete with. And also, FTAs will have to abide by WTO restrictions on subsidy. So, what if this will bring pressure on the government to alter the MSP prices? Because MSP is critical for our farmers to sustain their livelihood, right? But many countries could try to target the subsidy that India provides, which has happened in the past. So, Indian agriculture, Indian farmers are worried about FTAs. India's MSME industry, some of the small micro enterprises especially, they are concerned because they know that they can't match the quality and the price point of, let's say, foreign goods and foreign products. So that is where the concern comes up. Understood? That is the reason why we had quit RCEP negotiations, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which was led by China, right? India quit RCEP because of pressure from the farmers and as well as from the MSME industry. So there are some concerns being expressed with the UK FTA as well, and especially with regard to public procurement, what the government procures, right? So now UK companies can also compete in public procurement. They can also bid for government contracts. So this has been the bread and butter for Indian companies. India's medium, micro, small enterprises have depended heavily on government contracts. Now, what if these contracts go to British companies? Can they compete with them? That is another concern which has come up. So addressing these concerns is very important. And also, Britain is looking at imposing a carbon tax, just like European Union is considering the CBAM, a carbon border adjustment mechanism, where they will impose a green tax, a carbon tax on imports, which would have contributed to greenhouse gas emissions in the country where it was produced. So this is a cause of worry for India's steel and aluminum industry, because obviously steel and aluminum production will contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. So if we export that to UK might levy a carbon tax on it, stating that the production of this steel and aluminum led to greenhouse gas emissions in India, and UK might try to impose a tax on it. So this is something India has been opposing. We have strongly opposed the carbon tax that European Union has proposed. So we will oppose the carbon tax that UK is also proposing. So how will this affect the implementation of FTA? As of now, we can't answer that. We need to wait and watch. These are the concerns which are present. There are many positives, but there are some concerns present as well. Now, coming to the last big article, let's take a quick look at this and then the prelim section, and we can wrap up the discussion for today. This article is also very important. It focuses on the safe harbor provision which is provided to intermediaries. Now, don't worry, I'll explain this in simple words so that all of you can understand this. It's a very important topic. So, what do you mean by safe harbor? Who are these intermediaries? What is it related to? We'll learn everything in this article. The article actually provides us all the details, but I will go beyond the article as well, and we'll quickly discuss and understand what is safe harbor provision. See, this specifically applies to the IT industry, information technology, right? It specifically applies to internet-based platforms, social media, etc. These are the intermediaries, right? Social media platforms are hosting a lot of content. Internet-based platforms, it could be OTT platforms, digital media. right? They all host a lot of content which is generated by their users. Like, let's say you have an Instagram account, you have Facebook account, or you have YouTube account. You post something on it. So content is yours. The users, the followers, the subscribers are posting the content, not the company itself. Company has just given you a platform, right? So the company is essentially a third party. Now the question is, if someone posts something illegal on the platform, who should be held accountable for it? Should it be the user who generated and posted the illegal content? Or should it be the intermediary who continues to host that content? This is the big legal question which came up when IT products started evolving, when internet-based products started coming up in 1990s. So in the United States, a legal framework was created for this through the Communications Act. Under Section 230 of the Communications Act of the US, safe harbor provision was introduced. Now let's say there is a user who has posted about drug consumption, who is trying to encourage drug consumption, drug addiction. It's a harmful post which can harm the youth, which can encourage drug addiction. Or let's say there is a pedophile who has posted a sexually abusive material which depicts child pornography, which is blatantly illegal, which is a very serious criminal offense. Now, the question is, will you hold the company accountable for this? Should Google or Meta be held accountable for what some random criminal user has posted? Right? If you hold the company directly accountable, what will happen then, especially when the industry is developing, right? It will cripple innovation. Nobody will venture into these products because they will fear that they will be liable legally. They could get arrested. Company officials will get arrested eventually. That is why, to protect the companies, to create an environment of trust, to allow the companies to innovate, US introduced the safe harbor provision. India also introduced a safe harbor provision under the IT Act. The IT Act of 2000 contains a provision, Section 79. Please write this down. Section 79 of Information Technology Act of 2000 provides for a safe harbor provision. Safe harbor is basically legal immunity to the intermediary. Intermediaries are not directly accountable, responsible for the content that users are posting on their platform. The user will be held accountable. If a user has posted something illegal or objectionable or criminal, the user will be held accountable, arrested, and prosecuted, but not the company itself. Clear? So a safe harbor is provided. A legal immunity is given to the intermediary. But of course, this comes with conditions. It's not a blanket immunity which is given. It's not that the company can run away with this immunity and never claim it's not accountable for the content on its platform. There are conditions based on it. The condition is that the company should cooperate with the authorities. It should take down such illegal and harmful content. Proactively, the company should show interest to block harmful content, to take down illegal content, help the authorities investigate as well, and identify the users by sharing the details of the user with the law enforcement agencies. These obligations are expected from the intermediaries. Now, the point was in India, the IT Act, the legal immunity which was given, right? It was largely a blanket sort of legal immunity because we wanted to encourage these companies to create a internet-based economy, right? Because if you create an element of fear, if you create an environment of fear where these companies and their officials will be held legally liable, they will never set foot in India. So to ensure that we create a positive environment for the industry, we added the safe harbor provision, and only the users who are posting illegal, objectionable content would be held accountable under the law. But recently, changes have taken place here. In 2021, new set of IT rules were notified by the government. Information technology rules applying for intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code. Through the new set of IT rules of 2021, now even the intermediary can be directly held accountable if they do not cooperate with the authorities, if they do not follow the guidelines. IT rules has set new guidelines for social media intermediaries, for digital media, for OTT platforms. What are these guidelines? These companies mandatorily, they should have a registered office in India. They can't say we don't have operational jurisdiction in India. They can't say India doesn't have jurisdiction to ask for information or data from other foreign jurisdictions. They should have a mandatory registered office in the country, so they would be under our legal jurisdiction. They should appoint a nodal officer, a chief compliance officer, and a chief grievance redressal officer. so that users can raise complaints regarding illegal objectionable content, which should be addressed by the grievance redressal officer. The chief compliance and nodal officers, they should compile a report as to how the company is complying with the government guidelines and submit the report to the government. If police, law enforcement have to get in touch with the company to remove a post, to block a content, or to investigate a criminal case, we should know who's the nodal officer to contact. So these officers should be residents of India, right? These company officials, who's the nodal officer to liaise with the government, then the compliance officer who submits the compliance report to the government, and the grievance redressal officer who addresses the grievances of the users. These three company officials, they should be residents of India based out of the India office of this company. This is mandatory. Then clear guidelines have been given, time bound deadlines have been set. Within these many hours, illegal content has to be taken down. Let's say sexually explicit content. Let's say rape videos are being circulated, child pornography is being circulated, right? Especially if women's dignity is being harmed through morphed images, through deep fakes and uh, altered images and visuals. Such content should be taken down within 24 hours by the company. They have to do it mandatorily. And if enforcement authorities ask for cooperation, they have to cooperate. They have to share user details and user data. This is mandatory on the companies right now. If they follow and oblige with these guidelines, then they will continue having the safe harbor. Safe harbor is present even now. Section 79 has not been touched. The legal immunity given to intermediaries is still present. But it is conditional. If they follow the new guidelines, if they strictly abide by all the new guidelines of IT Rules 2021, only then they will enjoy the safe harbor and the immunity, which means their company officials will not be charged. They'll not be arrested. But however, few companies are not following the guidelines. Take, for example, X, which was previously Twitter, which is owned by Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not just problematic for US democracy, he has been problematic for India as well. Why? Elon Musk has publicly challenged the Indian government when India has ordered some posts to be taken down. If you have seen X as a platform, right, as it transitioned from Twitter to X and came under the ownership and leadership of Elon Musk, it has become a platform for fake news. Majority of the content of the platform today is fake news, disinformation. It has given a space for hate speech and extremism, particularly right-wing extremism. And this is a deep concern for a country like India. In several instances, Indian authorities have issued notices to X to take down and block certain content. But each time, Elon Musk has posted about it and criticized India for curbing freedom of speech and expression. So this is problematic for India when companies like this, when they don't cooperate. Now, just take the India-Pakistan tensions which happened. In the last 4 days, I'm sure you would have seen on X the kind of fake news and videos that were circulating. Pakistani propaganda and narrative was largely being pushed on X. Majority of those accounts were not blocked. It took a lot of time before it was blocked. By then, the damage would be done. Perceptions would have been shaped. Narrative would have been shaped. So this is the reason why Ministry of Electronics and IT is strictly considering to amend IT rules again to remove safe harbor altogether. This debate has taken place in the US as well. The Biden administration was also pushing to remove safe harbor to hold social media platforms accountable to curb the rise of extremism. Donald Trump also is pushing for removal of safe harbor, but for a different reason. Basically, to ensure that only a certain ideology is promoted on social media and other ideologies are removed and targeted. So in India, there is a deeper debate, a very legitimate discussion which is taking place. The Ministry of Electronics and IT, it has informed the Parliamentary Committee on Communication and Technology that we are considering the safe harbor provision. Should we keep it or remove it entirely? There was a incident a few years ago, a very popular e-commerce platform. On this e-commerce platform, CDs were being sold. The platform I'm referring to is eBay. On eBay's platform, CDs were being sold. And what did the CD contain? The CD contained child pornographic content, which is a very serious offense. In this case, authorities arrested the head of eBay in India. The head of eBay in India was arrested. So should we bring that back? Should we hold these companies accountable? Should we bring that legal accountability on them? That is what the ministry is considering. It has informed the Parliamentary Standing Committee that we are considering to remove safe harbor altogether. Right now, safe harbor is still present if they follow all the obligations of the IT guidelines, the IT rules. Right now, the consideration is let's remove this altogether. Let the company be equally responsible because foreign companies have created legal hurdles and problems for Indian investigations. Even after orders have been issued to block content, they have not done it. They've refused to share data in critical cases. That's why India is considering to revoke the IT Act itself, replace it with a new Digital India Act. This is being worked out in the ministry. The ministry is working on a draft Digital India Act so that a law which is better suited for current technologies, current developments in the IT industry can be brought out. Because IT Act is outdated. The IT Act had a lot of problems. The controversial Section 66A, which had led to the curbing of free speech and expression. Even for a basic social media post, people were getting arrested. It was finally struck down as unconstitutional in the landmark Shreya Singhal case by the Supreme Court of India. Even then, Supreme Court was critical of some of the flawed provisions of IT Act because it is not in tune with the current trends in information technology. So there is a need to bring a new law because today we are dealing with AI related threats and challenges. We are dealing with cyber frauds enabled through new forms of technology. We are dealing with deep fakes created through generative AI tools. The IT Act does not account for that. That is why India is actively considering to replace the IT Act entirely, maybe remove the safe harbor provision and hold these companies also accountable under the Digital India Act, which is now being drafted in the ministry. Yeah. So this is a topic that you need to follow. Maybe in few months, the Ministry of Electronics IT will publish a draft of the Digital India Act, and then it will become a very important topic for the exam. Now, coming to the last part of today's session, the prelim section, there is a very important article. According to a recent survey, the Sample Registration System Report 2021, which was carried out by the Registrar General of India under the Ministry of Home Affairs, this report has been published. This report focuses on various health and social indicators. And with regard to maternal and infant health, there are some very big positives for India, some big achievements, big milestones for India. See, when it comes to maternal and infant health, there are few indicators which are very crucial. Maternal mortality rate, which is nothing but MMR. It's the number of maternal deaths occurring in a given period per 1 lakh live births. We also have infant mortality rate, right? The infants who are under the age of 5 years for losing their lives before they attain the age of 5 years. We also have something called neonatal mortality rate. That is within 12 months of birth, if a child were to lose its life, it would get classified as a neonatal mortality. Now, these deaths occur during pregnancy, post pregnancy, where the mother dies or the infant child dies. This is a reflection of your healthcare system. It reflects the public healthcare infrastructure in the country. Countries with poor public healthcare infrastructure will have very high MMR and IMR rates. That is why, under the Sustainable Development Goals, tackling MMR and IMR has been a top priority. Under SDG 3, what is SDG 3? SDG 3 deals with good health and well being. Right? It sets few specific targets for countries to improve their health, to improve overall well being. So, if you look at target number 1 and target number 2, it deals with maternal mortality and infant mortality, respectively. So, SDG 3.1 focuses on reducing maternal mortality rate and sets a target. Then SDG 3.2 sets a target for infant mortality rate under the age of 5 years and a target for neo mortality rate. Now, India has been pursuing these targets. We chased these targets under Millennium Development Goals of the UN from 2000 to 2015. And because of various healthcare programs, maternal healthcare programs, infant healthcare programs, India did a phenomenal job and we started improving our numbers. Gradually, we have brought down MMR and IMR rates. And under SDG, which started from 2015, India has various maternal healthcare schemes. Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, the former Janani Suraksha Yojana, lot of schemes to encourage institutional delivery, to provide right nutrition to pregnant women, to provide access to institutional delivery and provide compensation as well, right? So that pregnant women need not be forced to work. A lot of such schemes have been provided to provide medicines, to provide the right nutrition to the child as well after birth, through Anganwadi centers, through our ICDS program. So, to all these efforts of the central and state governments, we have really improved our MMR and IMR numbers. And this data is a big reflection of the success that India has seen. According to this report, three states in India, Kerala, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, they have achieved all the three targets laid down by UN Sustainable Development Goals. What is the target? If you look at MMR, maternal mortality rate, the global target set by UN SDG is less than or equal to 70 by 2030. By the end of this decade, MMR should fall to 70 or below per 1 lakh live births, which means not more than 70 women should lose their lives during delivery, during pregnancy. And India is on track to achieve this. Believe it or not, around 8 Indian states have achieved this target, including Kerala, Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Jharkhand, and Gujarat. 8 Indian states have achieved the MMR target. Yeah. If you look at the IMR, infant mortality rate target, the under 5 mortality rate target is to have an indicator of less than or equal to 25 by 2030. And 12 Indian states have achieved it. Under 5 mortality rate has been achieved by 12 states. Finally, if you look at neonatal mortality rate, NMR, which is a type of infant mortality rate, the target by UN is less than or equal to 12 by 2030. So 12 or less than 12 infants in their neonatal stage should lose their lives per 1 lakh live births. That's the indicator there. 6 Indian states have achieved it. And there are 3 states which have achieved all the 3 targets. They've already met UN SDG goal. Which are these 3 states? Kerala, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu. They have met their MMR target. They have met their under 5 mortality rate. They have met their neonatal mortality rate. This points towards the tremendous success of India in improving public health care, focused on maternal health and infant health. There are many more states which are on track, especially Karnataka, then Gujarat, and Maharashtra as well. They're all on track to achieve all the 3 targets very soon. So, most likely, India will meet UN SDG targets 3.1 and 3.2 much before 2030. So, this is what you need to note down. Because if you go back and compare this data in 1990s, our MMR, IMR rates were alarming. So the reduction that we have seen is a phenomenal effort from the government of India, and it's honestly credit to the Indian healthcare system and policymakers of India. Coming to the last article on the supplement section, the Hindu mentions a tribe from Odisha, the Dongria Kondh. Dongria Kondh are a very unique indigenous community with a rich cultural tribal heritage attached to them. Dongria Kondh, they inhabit the Niyamgiri ranges in the eastern Ghats of Odisha, the Niyamgiri hill. The Dongria Kondh, they are very closely connected to their forest, to the nature, to the hill, the mountain. Right? They worship the mountain itself. Their most supreme deity, Niyam Raja. In fact, the hill Niyamgiri is named after this deity, Niyam Raja, who is worshipped by the people of the Dongria Kondh community. They worship the forest, the nature, the mountain. They protect and conserve them. Right? They live in harmony with their environment. They protect the water stream. They don't overexploit the resources. They practice basic resource extraction from the forest. They extract minor forest produce. Right? They used to hunt, but they have stopped hunting because of the environmental laws. But they carry out minor forest produce extraction. They carry out basic subsistence agriculture. So it's a community which is at peace with the surroundings, which has made a harmonious bond with the surrounding. Now, this community has some very rich cultural practices, which is mentioned here. They practice a type of traditional agriculture, a type of slash and burn agriculture called Podu agriculture. So UPSC might ask a prelims question. Which tribal community practices Podu agriculture? Podu is nothing but slash and burn, where you grow the crop and you slash it after the harvest and you burn the field and shift to the next field by clearing the forest land. So Podu agriculture or Podu cultivation is essentially inherent to the Dongria Kondh tribe. They also speak a unique language, the Kui language. It's a Dravidian language, a very ancient Dravidian language. which is spoken by the community. They perform all their songs, their art by using the Kui language, which is spoken. It's not written. It doesn't have a written script. And also their dressing, the festivals they mark, it's all very unique. Women actually wear just one piece of cloth wrapped around them. They don't even wear a blouse, but they wear a lot of jewelry, very eye-catchy earrings and nose rings are worn by them. They also have these permanent tattoos, very distinctive permanent tattoos on their forehead. So this is a feature of the women of the Dongria Kondh. If you look at the men, their dressing, this is also very traditional, very indigenous. They just wear a loincloth with a turban and they basically decorate their bodies with permanent tattoos. So tattooing is inherent to the Dongria Kondh. Now, why am I discussing this tribe in such detail? That's because the Dongria Kondh fought a legendary legal battle against a mining company to protect their home, to protect their mountain, to protect their tribal, religious, cultural rights. Mining company Vedanta was looking to exploit the bauxite resources found on the Niyamgiri hill ranges. The Niyamgiri range is rich in bauxite, and Vedanta was awarded the license. So the people of Dongria Kondh would have been uprooted. The ranges would have been destroyed. The biodiversity would have been destroyed because of this project. So Dongria Kondh people, with the help of activists, legal and civil society activists, they took the matter to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court intervened in 2013. It was a legendary battle which was reported around the world because the indigenous community had fought against a gigantic company, a corporate firm, at the Supreme Court, and they won the case in their favor. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Dongria Kondh, gave them the right to protect their land, their tradition, their culture, and the mining project was eventually shelved. That is why the Dongria Kondh are so popular. They fought this battle against Vedanta Group, protected the Niyamgiri hill ranges from an exploitative bauxite mining project. So please make a note of all these facts. It can be important for your prelims. So that is it. On this note, I bring the discussion to an end. I hope you guys have liked the session. And please let me know your thoughts on India-Pakistan, the ceasefire. Has India done the right thing? Right? So let me know what you think. And we'll discuss this in the coming days as well. And that is it for now. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Have a good day.